Will the Paper X train manage to make it all the way to Toronto, somehow crossing the sea? Or will it derail in a terrible collision and destroy many, many lives? Well, that is what we're going to try and answer today, because we're going to talk about Paper X. We did it a couple days ago when we looked at this game versus T1. And in this T1 game, they played on Fracture, Ascent, and Lotus. And you can see that all of the maps were very, very one-sided. And then against Boom, they also played on Lotus and Fracture. Now, in my video a couple days ago, we took a look at this Lotus game versus T1, where we showed some moments of Paper X looking very good. However, their next opponent is DRX. And I think it's very likely that in this game, what we're going to see is similar to what we saw in the Boom game, where Paper X will probably pick Lotus, and DRX also like to pick Fracture, so I feel like we're almost guaranteed to see those two maps again in this map pool. Which, if that is the case, we've already kind of seen a bit of Paper X's Lotus, so let's talk about their Fracture. So, for this, we're actually going to take a look at the Fracture game, both against T1 and Boom as well. One that went horribly and one that they managed to win. Let's start off with the T1 game just here. And really, so much of this comes back to Paper X's team comp, because they are playing a pretty extreme Fracture comp here. The double dive duelist with a breach, no drone of any sort, right? So this is a real, like, you know, throwback old school Paper X comp of we are just going to send it. And against T1, a lot of the early rounds looked like this, right? All 5 grouped together. Here we go. We're going to go towards A, right? Because this comp is pretty limited in terms of, you know, if you don't do this, well, you have no drone to re-clear areas and stuff like that. So, you know, it's going to be tough to run like kind of proper defaults and the like, right? So Paper X did a lot of this. The problem with doing this, of course, is that this can happen where, oh, the drone comes out here. Oh, it sees Forsaken. Oh, that's probably where Paper X are. Okay, we've seen some noise. We know where they're coming. You know, we know what's about to happen. You know, we just need to survive this exec. If you're T1, you're just like, well, this big exec is just going to come in from here, and we just need to survive it. And T1, as you're about to see, do a pretty good job of doing that.
Precisely. Hence the positions once again right now, and hearing so much info towards drop. The smokes have been propped up, and it's Jing trying to launch things with the showstopper. Doesn't really find too much, but just lets it rip straight in towards Spawn. Now hiding inside the smoke, and he gives Stacks a little bit of a kiss until Izu, though, swings back out for the trade. Meteor now trying to play inside the smokes, and he will spot out Divide, where Jing is the only one left. The spike down on the ground. Izu.
So obviously on a macro sense, we know that, hey, they're just sending it. If you're T1, it's perhaps pretty easy to read, but Paper X are just going to rely on their execution of doing these kind of rounds. The problem is I don't think this is a very good idea from Paper X, right? Normally when we've got Razor here, and I think we're gonna get Stacks who sends out a stun there that I think is the stun that stuns Jing here, but he's got Razor. Normally when you've got Razor, like, that's when we should be like, we don't need to do shallow smokes and a smoke on the site here when we've got Razor. None of this makes any sense. Why would we put a smoke here when we're Razorting, right? Like, you've given, like, for this guy, this is a dream. This is an attacking smoke, but this is like his fever dream against a Razor, right? Like, this wall coming across here, this smoke, like, he can hide from this Razor. Like, none of it makes any sense, because, you know, we should be looking to take as much space as we can with this Razor, right? Like, get them out of there, you know, and we'll just take all the space from you. Like, that's what we want. We don't want to play with less space in this post plant when we don't need to, but that's what Paper X decided to choose to do. I mean, Jing is now past his own team smokes. For some reason, Forsaken had the spike. You know, the Razor misses. I honestly don't know. It looks like, I mean, with this smoke, normally when you get this smoke on site here, it's like the Razor's going to double blast back in and we're playing cringe, right? The problem is they're not running Tail. And they don't have Brimble. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why this smoke? I have no idea. It's like we're in 3 different rounds here. I mean, why Forsaken ever has the spike doesn't make any sense, right? That probably never makes sense to have your Neon have the spike and run in. And so the execution of these rounds, you know, obviously from a macro standpoint, it's quite simple. It's quite obvious what Paper X were doing a lot of the time, but also their execution of, you know, those simpler ideas was also very poor. However, after getting obliterated all the way to 7-0, Paper X did eventually start to come up with some, you know, slightly different, I think, more clever ideas, because they did try some rounds where, you know, they tried like a full default and, you know, they're walking around, and that just doesn't work either, right? Because as soon as you run into, for instance, like a buzz op, like, I mean, you just don't have the tools with this comp to, you know, run like proper, you don't have a drone. Right? Like, it's just going to be hard. It's just going to be really, really hard. when you don't have a drone, right? So what they started to do instead was stuff like this later on, which this is one of the few rounds that they won in this game, where you've got this kind of split here with the Neon Killjoy together. And initially you might be like, that's a bit of a strange pairing here, but it does make some sense because Paper Rex earlier on as well, they did run some 4-1 hits, right? Where it would be like Devi on his own here on south side, which is a pretty common idea, right? And then 4 players up towards the north side, and you'd get the big exec coming down here one of these ways, often towards A, and Devi would be on his own. The problem with that is that Devi, when he's on his own down here, he can't really push the go button, right? Like if you're T1 and they're running like a 4 big exec down A, well, if you run into A main here, like Devi, he's still got to be worried about, you know, someone coming this way. He's still, you know, on his own. So if, you know, multiple people push in towards A main and are coming at him, he's still in kind of a bad spot here. He can't really ever, like, hit the go button, right? Because what Paper X are expecting is, hey, they're going to find us, and then they're going to know what's going on, and then they're just going to, you know, take the space elsewhere, and then Devi, he can't really do much about it. But by putting a second player here, by putting Forsaken in here as well, like, imagine that, you know, they drone out here. They see 3 people in a raise, right? They're going to think, oh, the big exec's coming down here. Maybe they push down here, but then they push into 2 players instead. Or, you know, we can then surprise them by having the speed in here to actually make this a full pinch, right? So we can have speed from both sides, making this a pinch from Forsaken. And this was one of the few rounds where they did find some success here, Paper Rex. And I think in part, you know, this is a more clever way potentially of running this comp. Still has risk, still could go very wrong, of course. You're not going to have perfect rounds all the time. But when you can get into this kind of position, and people won't be used to this, right? People won't be used to full execs with dive duelists coming in from both sides. Yeah, you can see that they still kind of get a bit destroyed there by, you know, some of the things that are going on. But if we just run it back here for a quick moment, you'll see, like, look at Meteor here, right? He's full focus. I mean, of course he's full focused on this, right? Why wouldn't he be? Even after his Vice Wall has gone up, right? But he's still like, oh, the pressure is this, right? My problems are coming from this side. Not aware at all that actually our Neon is running all the way up here, right? So this is how Paper Rex managed to, you know, towards the end of the half, it was too late, right? They were already 7-0 down. The game was already over, like, you know, and their execution wasn't good enough still from that point on to make that a game. But they started to have a couple ideas that maybe found a bit more success. But now let's skip ahead to the Boom game, and I think from some of those rounds towards the end of that half, Paper X learned from that experience that they can't just 5-0 send it. Yeah, you're still going to do that sometimes because that's kind of what your comp, you know, is going to do, you know, a fair amount of the time, those 4-1s, 5-0s, but there has to be some mix-ups. There has to be some change-up in there, and if we come to the first full gun round here against Boom, we see some of that mix-up, right, where we've got Ray's Neon alone here on north side. And normally you would never see this, right? You'd almost certainly be like, well, the breach should be with the 2 duelists, right? But this is clever. It makes sense because, again, if Boom see there's a Raze and a Neon here, you're going to assume this is probably 4 people. And people might run into a main off the back of that, right? That's something, you know, that's a reaction that Boom might have, expecting it just to be Devi here or no one there, right? Instead, they're running into 3 players and we can stun and flash them with the breach util and really, like, pinch on them, right? And really destroy them if they are in here. But it makes sense to do it in this round as well, because if you're worried about, like, oh, our 2 duelists are just going to get trapped in here, though, well, for this round, it makes sense because they've got the Razel, right? So you know you're not going to get bogged down. Or if, you know, Boom decide to run, you know, a more aggro play out here, well, we Raze ult, and they're probably not going to feel so great about that aggro play, are they? Right, so we can feel confident that these 2 guys are going to get up to the site because they can Raze ult at any point they feel any danger. And then these guys, you know, can be there to pinch on any trap there, you know, or like kind of farm up, you know, anything that comes their way. So again, just kind of mixing it up there from Paper X led to some success.
Go for the classic new turn setup. Rolling thunder them forward with the showstopper.
Dust 9 also doesn't have any shield here.
Showstopper now going to be sent. Jing expecting some pressure off the back of that fault line, but in fact it is just a massive retreat over towards that rope, which that's going to be a decent amount of splash damage on the DOS 9. As drop down from Shiro, is able to find 1, but then Paper X opens up the firing squad. 2 more kills in reply.
And you see also that when we Raze ult in this round, you know, we aren't sending smoke straight away. You know, we are, you know, waiting, seeing if we can get a kill with the Raze ult. Then we're sending in the deep smokes because we're expecting the Boom to retreat. We get some really good trades here from Paper X, and they end up winning this round. Now, I'm not going to show you the rest of the round, you know, for time reasons, but it gets a little bit messy, it gets a little bit scrappy, but they end up winning on time. Okay, now let's skip ahead to round number 6, and this one is actually an eco here for Paper X. So they don't have the best guns, but again, take a look at what they're doing, because they've gone for the Killjoy Neon again, and the 3 up here on the north side, right? And again, you're just going to see at the start of this round, we're adding in like a Neon here to just help Devi with this. If you imagine this is Devi alone, and, you know, these guys are going to push here, you know, he's just dead. Right, but because he has the support of Forsaken here, just take a look at what happens instead.
Mikey's a duel early in the tree.
Oh, tucked into the corner, and he's looking to get overwhelmed, but DOS9 is overstepped. Up here at Arcade, not gonna find the shot there for Famous. Forsaken, now a weapon upgraded in ahead of that Aftershock. Does get whittled away at.
So it's still not rocket science, right? Just to mix it up a bit, but it does create some problems for opponents, because now they can't just like instantly know what Paper X are going to do and whether you should push in certain situations or not. And you see, just by having Forsaken there, you know, to kind of deal with it, have the util to kind of deal with those kind of things, right? That if Devi is alone, he probably doesn't have enough util to deal with that on his own, right? And is going to be worried about what's coming from behind instead. We instead get a you know, a very successful eco kind of, you know, exec onto this site. We end up taking the full site, you know, all of Boomer in their spawn, right? Like it's a good exec here. Now this is just an eco, so they are going to end up actually losing this round, but you know, if this wasn't Nico, they were in a very, very good spot, and essentially, you know, this was another successful round from Paper X, from, you know, just mixing up a bit more. And if we skip ahead to round number 11 now, we'll see another round where there's, again, something a bit different, because this time, they're gonna, again, go for this A hit, right? So again, off the barriers, we're very clear in terms of, like, what site we are going to, right? The site that we're trying to end up at is very clear. However, the way that we're doing it is different, right? Because here we just got Jing completely alone. Now, again, this is a risk, right? And you're going to see in this round, at the start of this round, he is actually going to die, right? And so we're going to end up in a 5v4. And he's going to be worried about what's coming around this way as well, because, of course, he has no way of knowing, essentially. But again, they've gone for this because they have got that Raze ult on again, so they're thinking, hey, if they aggro into Jing, he can at least go 1-for-1. He's actually not going to end up doing that, but again, it does create some space for the rest of his team.
Well, Devi still retaining that one. Immediate utility going to be forcing them back out of main unless they want to wait to contest it, which is what Forsaken's going to be doing here.
Beacon down.
Immediate rotations too for Boom.
Push coming through, and Jing, uncharacteristic whips, doesn't even find much damage. Shiro.
And so this is a good call by Boom. It's a good understanding by Boom here of you know, what they needed to do, because they do see both duelists, so they understand that it is a bit split here, right? And they correctly assume that Forsaken is on kind of the stronger side here. You know, they send out the drone with the Teo that does see Jing kind of alone back here, so they quickly decide we're gonna aggro over towards Jing. Now they actually don't get there in time for when he's actually suppressed, but you see that he's worried about what's coming from the other side just here. But again, just this kind of setup of having kind of, you know, if you have the duelist split here, right? Yeah, they've gone and aggroed here. They found the kill on Jing. This has gone about as bad as it possibly could have done. But because we have the split duelists, that means we can still accelerate here, right? We know we can still get into the site before these guys can get back, right? And that is important. And that is one of the kind of the advantages here of, you know, Paper X deciding to split up their duelists, is that if you do get any aggro on one side, we know we're going to have the speed here to get to do this, right? Where we're going to get the spike down, and now we're in a post plant where, yeah, we're in a 4v5, but we still got breach up Brim ult and the spike's going down, right? It's still not gonna be an easy round for Boom to convert, and actually Paper X are gonna win it.
Rolling Thunder held, but Armageddon, I don't think that Batman's gonna be able to get away from this one. Oh, he's barely slides out. What a narrow window. And now he's got the Rolling Thunder at the ready. Orbital Strike will start. Forcing back NC Slasher from drop. Something swinging up towards Sand. Ends up getting taken down as Divine. Finding one with the op, eating a flash. Rolling Thunder holds the rest of the team back. 2v3, looking for the smoke timing for Forsaken. Finding the headshot, and they're just picking their targets and nailing them.
So Paper X overall, I think, have definitely improved and are continuing to get better. I still don't think their Fracture is that great. I wouldn't be shocked if DRX do pick Fracture and we get to see this map again. If I was Paper X, I'd probably start adding in some kind of big fakes as well, so that you don't know exactly what site they're going to either off the start of the round, but we'll have to see how they do in their game against DRX. Can they qualify for Masters? It's close.